Welcome back to the Nano Cruising Podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Marceau. This podcast is about dinghy cruising and trailer sailing. We also cover all kinds of little craft cruising, kayak, canoe sailing. Before we get to the meat of the show, in between topics, there's usually a sound that I put in between. A Nano Cruising follower suggested that listeners guess what the sound is and send in their entry and guess to the Nano Cruising Facebook group. And the closest to the actual sound will get a sticker of Nano Cruising, which I've yet to order, but we'll get them soon. I think this will be a great idea and a fun idea and involve the listeners. Thank you. Back to the show. Today we continue our conversation with Roger Barnes. You've done tons of exploring of the coast, the French coast, and so on. So what are your favorite grounds and favorite moments you've had, experiences, alone or in groups? What do you like?
Oh, it's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes the things you look back on and you think, oh, that was amazing, often weren't necessarily completely enjoyable at the time. There's that challenge, and then you survive and you get somewhere and you look back on it and think,
the accomplishment.
That was an accomplishment. I've quite often, one place that's pretty challenging, and I have a friend who's has actually sailed around Britain in a wayfarer, and he says sailing to Lundy is very challenging. It's this island in the Bristol Channel. So it's something you can do in a day. You couldn't really go there and come back in a day, but it's only a day's sail to get there.
Right.
It's about 8 hours sail. My usual 8 hours sail, but very strong tides. The Bristol Channel, the second highest tidal range in the world.
Wow.
You, of course, in Canada have the highest tidal range in the
Bay of Fundy. I don't know if I'd like to sail there.
We have the second. And,
wow.
And it's just got cliffs all around. It's 3 miles long, flat on the top, sort of 500-foot high cliffs, and no harbour. So you're just moored to this island under the shadow of the cliffs. And if the wind changes, you've no shelter at all. But it is actually, there are houses on it. When you get there, there is this little community. So it's and it feels like a really ambitious thing to do. When you get there, there's no marina or anything like that. There's just cliffs, and there you are. And I have done that a few times, and there's always an adventure going to Lundy.
Nice.
But more and more, I actually, when I'm thinking of, going sailing at the end of the week, or now I very flexible lifestyle, so it doesn't need to be the end of the week, but I'm just going to go out sailing for a couple of days. I mostly think, it'd be nice to sail up a river in shallow waters and have a lot of things happening. Because the trouble is of going out into open waters, there's a long period of not very much going on, isn't there? There's just waves and cold and so on. And my attention span is getting worse, but I like more things happening. So I actually like sailing closer to the coast and dodging rocks and going into little bays and things like that, which my boat is really well adapted to as well. More and more, that's the sort of thing. I think that's a nice thing to do.
That's what.
And the other thing that's happening in my life is I'm obviously doing the YouTube videos.
Right.
Which have been breathtakingly, it staggers me how successful they have been, how popular they have become. And that's very nice. It's charming. People stop me in the street and say,
we love it. We love it.
Are you Roger Barnes? Are you the person who does the videos? Which is a bit like being Brad Pitt. I'm sort of feeling.
You are the Brad Pitt of Dinghy Cruising.
Brad Pitt probably has it worse, I have to say. But it does happen. So that's all lovely. But the problem is that I feel this horrible responsibility to produce videos.
Oh, no.
Long periods of time. Just recently, a long time has gone by since I did one because of working on the house.
Yeah.
So I haven't been sailing. And so a day in which lots of things happen makes a better video.
That's
so I've
right.
got to think about that as well. What's going to happen if I film this? And just going out to sea and sailing for hours across waves, and I can't really take the camera off the boat, so basically people are just going to see me and wave.
It is difficult to film and to do it in the right time. It is difficult to do.
The point is, I've done that film. One can keep doing it over and over again, but it doesn't change very much. The nicer shots are if you can get the camera off the boat. So
Yes.
you have to. This is, of course, what happens. Giving away some secrets. I have to sail into a bay, put the camera on the shore on a tripod, sail out of the bay, and then sail back in again, and then get ashore before the camera blows over or someone steals it.
That is the reality of YouTubers, for sure.
That's the reality of filming. Yeah,
Yes.
There we are. It's all fake. It's all fake.
You have a lot of good videos too on how-tos, for example, right? That are very important, I think. So I know you cost me because I had to buy an Origo stove because you had the video on your little your galley, your portable galley, right? That was fantastic. So, okay, fine, I got to get one of those. So those are good.
But again, I got that stove, and there are all sorts of reasons why I did it, and I like it. But there are other stoves. Other stoves are available, and Origo you can get again now from Compass in Germany. I've started making it, so that is still available. But it's now called the Compass stove. So there you are.
And the Dinghy Cruising Association, you started that, is that correct?
Oh, no, it predates me.
Oh, does it? I wasn't sure. Okay, you're very involved, obviously.
It really does predate me, before I was born. Yes, it was set up in 1956.
Oh my God, I didn't realize. Okay.
There was a sort of what we'd call dinghy cruising scene at the time. Various people had written books about it. There's some in the Dinghy Cruising Association. We have this sort of, it's almost like the books of the Bible. We have these ancient texts that we can, we talk about, written by the founders of the organization, the association, before it was founded.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Eric Coleman and various others. They wrote these books, and they're very interesting, and they're sailing often traditional heavy dinghies that and people with not very much money back in the 1950s started doing dinghy cruising. As we now people were doing things like that in before the war as well, but the sailing, sort of modern sailing, very much is dinghy sailing is very much a post-war thing. It's rather different before the war.
Okay.
And yes, so they founded it just so they could share information. There were all these individual people doing it, and they never seemed to meet anyone else doing it. Still a bit like that.
It is still a bit like that here too. We're all pockets from everywhere. That's right.
Yes, So they thought it'd be nice to have rallies so we can all meet each other, and it would be nice to share information. And the third main aim of the association that remains part of its remit was to publicize this activity, to actually say this is why you should do it, and to stand up against the all the implied advertising for yachts. That's, you see, because there's an awful lot of that. Because the most typical question is, why do you cruise in a dinghy when you could cruise in a yacht? We still have to deal with that question, don't we? So, yes.
Yeah. It's because of the boat dollars. A friend of mine used to call it boat dollars. It says, $100 bill is, or pound, I guess, is $100 bill is one boat dollar. So when he goes to the chandlery, he says, I spent $3. Yeah, what's 3 boat dollars?
Yeah, so. That's what I was saying. It's always multiples of $100, £100.
Exactly.
100 euros. All these currencies are actually about the same value, funnily enough.
So what's your involvement in the DCA today? Because I've seen you.
I'm still the president.
Yeah, you're the president, and I've seen you at the boat shows in Falmouth and so on. So yeah.
Well, it's I wouldn't say we're terribly disorganized, but we're not incredibly organized. We don't have extremely rigid structures. We just have people who are our officers and who do things, really.
Yes.
And whenever someone says to us, oh, why doesn't the Dinghy Cruising Association do this, a new activity? And I always say to them, well, are you volunteering? Because any activity we do, it's not like we have a big paid staff and a huge headquarters building. And we can just say, right, you lot, go and do this. We've got this great idea. We need a list of slitways. List of slitways would be really great, but huge amount of work to have an updated list of slitways.
Yes.
And yes, so we need, the things we do are because we found someone who's prepared to do it.
Okay.
And so that's sort of how it works. As president, I would like to see my role as being just talking to people and publicizing and meeting interesting people and not doing anything dull and boring. I feel that's what I should be doing, and all the other people. But the trouble is that what tends to happen is all the things that we are meant to do, that there isn't we have someone who does the bulletin, for instance.
Yes. That's right.
Huge amount of work, amazing thing that we have this quarterly bulletin. And actually, Keith does do other things as well. Bless him, he does dip his, assist us in other things as well. But a lot of the time, if there's something extra has to be done, that's where the president steps in. I end up sweeping up whatever this is. So yes, someone needs to know about something, and they end up contacting me. So
you've grown internationally too, right? You've got Dinghy Cruising Association.
We are, yes, for years and years and years, we were about 600 members, and basically in Britain, sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more. And now I don't know the latest figures, but it's thousands now, and it's all around the world, mostly the Anglophone world.
Right.
But we've got members here in continental Europe as well.
Right.
So yeah, we organise rallies in France, in Poland. Nice. Up in the Baltic now and then as well.
That's great.
We are taking over the world slowly.
It
would seem, actually, but slowly, but with increased speed.
I agree. I think a lot of people have seen the light. It's, okay, this is fun. I can go different cruising ground every different weekends, right? So this is
that I think is the really big advantage, and I think that. I think the strange thing is that we're somehow in touch with the modern world. Although we have been around for over 60 years, there's a way in which I think dinghy cruising is incredibly modern, actually.
You're hitting on my philosophy.
Owning a big yacht and keeping it in the marina seems like an old way of looking at the world to me. It's terribly inflexible. I say, this is a little port town I live in now, in Douarnenez, and we have actually 3 ports in Douarnenez, so you can sit on a quayside and look at boats in 3 bits of the town, and we have lots of old wooden boats, but there was lots of yachts as well. And I sometimes sit. There's a nice fish and chip shop. Funnily enough, we have a fish and chip shop, even though this is France.
I saw that. I saw that in your last video.
And I sit there eating my fish and chips, and I look at these yachts. There's a row of yachts. And they're all like 40 foot long, like most cabin yachts are now. Benito, this,
they're all huge. That
there. And I look at them, and they're always there. I'm sure they go sailing sometimes, but mostly they're just always there. And you think, what? They're hundreds of thousands of euros each. Those, and what are they doing there? Why do people own them? I do look at them and think, I'm sure they're really comfortable inside, and they've probably got showers and hot and cold running water and all sorts of stuff like that people demand. But it just seems an extraordinary amount of money to spend on something that just sits there doing nothing. And you have to pay, it's not like free to leave your boat alongside a pontoon, is it? Whereas my poor little dinghy, which hasn't been sailing for 3 months now because of work on the house, is sitting in a garage and is not costing me anything.
That's right.
And it's not coming to any harm. It's not declining. You know, she's perfectly fine in there, and she will go very soon. I am going to go sailing and do another video. Trust me. But yes, you know, and it's very nice to be able to have that relationship with your principal leisure activity, that you can just stop for a bit, and it's not.
It's not the end of the world.
I just stop. Yeah, it's just there. The boat's there. I can take her out again. But I'm not. Yes, I just having this. That's the trouble with yachts, and they don't just sit. They don't just sit on a pontoon waiting for you to go sailing.
They spend money.
Deteriorate.
They deteriorate.
They deteriorate.
That's right.
Yes.
So for those interested in dinghy cruising, but hesitant to start, what advice would you give them to help overcome their concerns?
Oh, the way you learn is just to do it.
That's right.
Yeah, obviously, I should say, read my book. There we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I need a publicist sitting beside me saying, "Say, read my book."
It's fantastic. I love that book.
Other than read my book, it really is going and doing it,
yes.
and pacing yourself, recognizing that a lot's going to go. One of the weird things about, particularly if we're actually talking about dinghy cruising, is not just sailing down the estuary and going to a beach and having a picnic, though even that's actually very different from just sailing. And a lot of people just go sailing for an hour and then come back again. You know,
right.
If we're talking about dinghy sailing, that's
yes.
what they do. Or they go racing, and races are if it's half an hour, that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of people's experience of sailing is brief bursts. As soon as you make it a few hours and you take some food with you and you want to go somewhere, and then you've got to think about if it's tidal waters. We both live, I suppose you might live near lakes, actually. But yes, as soon as it's tidal water, you've got to think, what's the tide going to be doing while I'm on that beach? And is the boat going to dry out, or is it going to float away? Or that all changes it
mm-hmm.
into a completely different sort of activity. But if you're sleeping aboard, the first time sleeping aboard a boat, particularly afloat on at an anchor,
mm-hmm.
you feel really exposed. It's
mm-hmm.
so outside
mm-hmm.
normal terrestrial, life, staying in hotels or even in a tent on land.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it feels really challenging, and there'll be all sorts of noises in the middle of the night, and things will go wrong. And yeah,
I didn't sleep a wink the first time I did that.
You just don't have to get disheartened by all those things.
Yes,
but yes, it is just a case of doing it. And the thing is that it's actually not really that dangerous. You'll be uncomfortable perhaps, but you're unlikely to come to any great harm. If we are dinghy cruising, you probably are in shallow waters and fairly close to the shore and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
It's
mm-hmm.
more about unpleasantness than absolute danger. Though, it can be dangerous, but you're likely to stay well within the limits of it being dangerous, actually, simply just by the fear of the unknown.
That's right.
So, I just think get a reasonable boat and just start doing it.
Just do it a little bit at a time.
Just do
it.
Baby
steps.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
Yes. Yeah. The thing is, there are what's challenging about dinghy cruising is there aren't dinghy cruising shops. You can't go to a shop and buy all the stuff. Everything for dinghy cruising. There aren't. If there is such a shop, I don't know it. But that's also one of the beauties of it, is that it isn't pre-packaged, and so much in modern life is completely pre-packaged, and you do just go in somewhere and buy all the bits.
That's right.
And then there's extra bits, and then there's books about the even extra bits you can buy. Well, there just sort of isn't really. So you are, yes, that's it's very nice to be outside the standard sort of retail, structure of modern life.
Mm-hmm.
We're completely different to that, really.
That's nice. That's good.
Yeah.
Good point. What do you see the future of dinghy cruising? Do you think younger generations are taking to it? Do you see that? Hopefully they are. I've seen a few, but
I don't know is the answer.
Mm.
A lot of people do seem to still go through the yacht owning phase and then find out that yachts are big and expensive and they're not using them enough. Because the thing is that you can actually buy second-hand yachts quite cheaply. They are, if they're not
Absolutely.
particularly large, they can seem seductively cheap way of getting afloat, and it's only later that you discover how much they cost to run.
Yes.
Because it's the running costs, as we all know about boats. It's the running costs that kill you, not the capital costs. And funnily enough, a decent dinghy is often be the same price.
About the same price. That's right.
Yeah, no, so that isn't the thing. But it's also the flexibility of having this boat you can use in lots of different ways. And it does seem that people come to this sage decision later in life, mostly, rather than young. I have to say that also the problem is that you do have to have somewhere to put the boat. It does sort of come with the advantage is it is to do really, I think, with a boat on a trailer that you tow behind a car and you can take lots of different places. And obviously we can talk about how often we should be using cars and the whole global warming thing and so on. But if you're just using a car occasionally for taking your boat to a different sailing water as compared to driving to the same marina every day, I should think, we end up ahead there, really. But it's more to do with the fact that young people now don't necessarily own houses, and they don't have anywhere to put a car, and they don't have anywhere to put a boat. And putting all that together now, having that sort of stable life that, people are into their 40s before they have all that stuff.
True.
And if you're that is a big problem, actually.
That is a big problem.
So it's, although I think we're working with the grain of the modern world in terms of our activity, it does demand a lifestyle that's increasingly unavailable to young people. So that's why young people do paddleboarding or something, because they can have a room in a shared house and an inflatable paddleboard, and they can go paddleboarding. And things like paddleboarding are the big threat, really, because it's a very similar sort of thing. It's not competitive. Well, if it is, I've not heard about competitive paddleboarding.
No, I have not heard that either. It's very leisurely.
Yes, sort of just going out.
Yes.
But the benefit of dinghy cruising, I think, over paddleboarding is that you are going out there and doing it over a number of days. If you're actually going for a little dinghy cruise. And it is this completely immersive activity. It's just everything. It is dipping into another sort of life, having everything aboard your boat, and the food and the bedding and some sort of shelter, and then existing in that way on the sea or on a lake or on a river for 3 or 4 days. Really interesting change of life. And I think as radical as anything you can do, short of going up a very high mountain, actually, in terms of stepping outside the ordinary world.
Yes. That's my big philosophies. I believe, whether it's hiking, whether it's dinghy cruising, kayaking, it's all that. Humans, we need to, it's, dinghy cruising, definitely. You need to think about the wind, and so on. It puts you in touch with nature so much more that we're so isolated from. That maybe 200 years ago we were not, but now in the last 150 years, we're in houses, we're on the internet, we're totally isolated from weather and so on. A little bit, but not really when you're out cruising and so on. You're really in touch with the movements of the planet, which I think is fantastic.
Yes, exactly. And which way the wind's blowing suddenly becomes absolutely crucially important. Which way the wind's blowing. That is absolutely crucial, and what the tide's doing.
Yes.
It's crucially important to you in a way that, yes, I forget which way the wind's blowing here in a house. I don't know actually today. And I'd have to go and open a window to find out. Yes, we're completely isolated.
So what are your future plans? Are you going to be cruising around this area more, I think? Is Avildro in England now, or is it?
No, she's here in Douarnenez in the garage.
Oh, she's here. Okay.
Yeah, here in France.
Okay.
So The idea is to try and do more, using the fact that I can tow her around.
Absolutely.
And this is the advantage of not going for a large boat,
Right.
because she is just as long as the car again, really. So she's she feels quite big, funnily enough, on a trailer. And I often think actually I not want a boat any bigger than that. Friends who've bought slightly bigger boats, I do notice, don't trail them around quite so much. So yes, I've been talking actually just yesterday. A dinghy sailing friend came and we had a long drunken evening, and we talked about sailing in Croatia.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
You did go to Venice. I thought it was amazing.
Exactly. I went to Venice, and Croatia is only just a little bit further.
It's not far away. That's right.
Yeah. And yes, so these are quite long drives, but yes, to do sort of things like that. There's talk of coming to North America.
Nice. Let us know.
I wouldn't bring the boat, but
we'll find boat for you. Absolutely.
Yes, that people will find boats.
We have members that have 20 plus boats.
Into North America, and people will supply boats for me.
Absolutely.
There's we really am talking about that. So that could well happen next summer.
So that's your future, trying different
That's
places.
The idea is to do more.
That's
yes, but somehow in the meantime, I seem to have got embroiled in doing up a house. So
that was supposed to take less than a year, of course.
which wasn't supposed to take anywhere near as long as it has.
Anything else, Roger, you want to talk about that I have not covered?
Yeah, I think I have to. Yes, there is this thing about kit, and it is quite interesting, particularly when you do YouTube videos. Now, look at what people do who have channels a bit like mine. They don't tend to be about dinghy cruising, because there aren't a lot of us.
There's a few. There's a few, not many.
It does seem to be growing, but people often do sort of, bushcraft sort of videos. It's a bit similar, but it all often ends up being about kit. What things you need, and we sort of covered this a bit before, but just simply about dinghy cruising is what you need on a boat. And my book, I did end up talking about a lot of bits of kit that would be helpful, and because I thought, well, I have to address the issue, but it is a lot to do with sailing with as little as possible and knowing what you're doing.
It's still having everything.
But it's knowing what you're doing. There's a tendency in the what we're trying to do, I would say, is to. One's not criticizing the modern world to the extent of stepping outside it entirely and becoming a hippie and running a little self-sufficient farm. There's nothing wrong with that. But what one's experiencing a different sort of lifestyle out in the wild, and the weather and the wind and the rain and so on. And you don't want too many bits of equipment. And if you don't have equipment, what you have to have is knowledge. And the way the world used to work 200 years ago or more was people didn't have very complicated equipment, but they knew how to do things. And what we've done in the modern world is we've created lots of bits of equipment that do all the stuff that you used to have to know how to do. A good example is astronavigation. People used to have sextants, and used to have to know how to find where they are. Now we have GPS, and you've got a little GPS chart plotter. You've got a little chart, and it's now on your phone.
On your phone now, right?
And you know where you are the whole time. And that's really, really recent that we've all been able to look at our phones and know exactly where we are.
That's right.
And we don't even need to look at a map to drive, our car. We just ask the phone, don't we now? So that's made life a lot simpler. But knowing how to use a map and work out where you are, there were all sorts of things came along with that, to do with getting to know, the lie of the land and what other routes there are and things like that. And I think for dinghy cruising, it is, though I do have a GPS chart plotter. The modern equipment is great, but don't have too much of it. It is this try and keep it simple, because I think the beauty of it is this simple life, and having when I'm on the boat, my life is very, very simple. It is simply to do with the weather and the tides and the direction of the wind and what I'm going to eat for my next meal. That's really what my life is reduced to, those four things. And that's really refreshing, I think.
Thank you so much, Roger. Really appreciate you. You're a pillar of the community, and I built this to reach out to get more people to the sport and, you know, get in touch with nature, really. And I love it too. And the people there, make good people connection, you know, and people that you meet on the weekends on the water becomes your best friends and so on. It's fantastic.
No, well, it's people who do this sort of activity, what you call nano cruising, they're always different, and because it's so unusual, it is still an unusual thing to do. So there's always a story how people got into it. That's always very interesting, isn't there?
Thank you so much, Roger. It's been a great day.
Yes, no, well, thank you. A pleasure to talk to you.
All right. Did you guess the sound? If you did, just post your guess in our Facebook group, Nano Cruising, which you can also join to participate and be involved in the upcoming episodes. Our next episode is with Kristen Bervin. She has written several times for Small Craft Advisor, and she sails a Sparrow 16. Should be a very interesting discussion. Thank you all for listening, and as usual, seize your own adventure.